the casual discussion which we had with some of you, that today I thought I can prepare for some, basically make some slides and other things, but I was not able to do it. So anyway, so we'll start on what is called as physical realization of quantum computers. So by now am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So by now you have the existing digital computers, what we are using to communicate with each other. So here the information, whatever which you know, is in binary digits, 0 and 1. So all the things, whatever we are saying, is getting encoded in those bits, getting and transmitted across different lines. It can be optical, it can be electrical, a mix of both, and then it reaches you, and we are able to see face to face. So the information, all that whatever we say, the different frequencies and amplitude, modulation, pop, or whatever the pauses which we give, is all stored in bits, 0 and 1. That's all. That is all that is required. Mhm. Now, the things which you can just ponder on, if all that information that is recorded in bits, 0 and 1, how is that I'm able to hear you differently? That means different individuals will have different voices. Okay, so we say the pitch is different or the frequencies are different. Okay, and someone will yell at you, someone will talk very softly, someone will talk normally. So these are the some physical parameters of making yourself audible. So detection of the frequency, detection of the amplitude, and the pauses which you give, which leads to the phase, all that information constitute a credible information which you require to communicate across the different devices, so that it could be encoded on the, it can be decoded and you can hear. The challenge which I just want to ask you, possibly you might have done in digital electronics, how are these frequencies encoded? Means how is it possible when I'm encoding all that information, whatever I talk, in zeros and ones, right? How
So,
is that the frequency with which I speak and with which you speak gets encoded in that information?
so analog to digital converter.
That is okay. Analog converter is there, but how? I mean, see, ultimately information is in the digital form, right? It is zeros and it's a sequence of zeros and ones. No, nothing. It is all only digital information. That's all. 0 and 1. Hmm? Second string of bits. So you are saying that one of the dedicated, one among the 16 bit is dedicated to the particular frequency. Physical attribute. Mhm. Just 1 second. There's some call from the hostel office. I'll just take the call. To encode the information, the frequency. So if it is a 4-digit, then the resolution, it will have some resolution. Whereas the frequency with which each one of us speaks, it can be continuous from anywhere from 0 to 20 kilohertz. So the range of frequencies which can be encoded in this digital system will be finite, right? Even if we assume that is a scheme with which it could have been encoded. Okay. So therefore, it's the limitation of the digitizing the information. There's a lot of loss of information is there. So therefore, you require higher and higher number of bits. Okay, ideally, as close as to the reproducing the analog voltage behavior or analog signal behavior. So how do you determine what is the minimum tolerance of that delta mu or frequency which can be there, which can reproduce the signal with high fidelity, such that my voice after hearing will be very unique. It may not mix with, let's say, Johnson's voice, and because without ambiguity we are able to distinguish each other's frequency. So these are the challenges. What we are trying to highlight here is the challenge of encoding the information. Having learned that, okay, quantum computing, you know that you can take a qubit and encode an information, right? Alpha 0 plus 0th state plus beta 1 state, where mod of alpha square plus mod of beta square is equal to 1 for a 2-level system. And alpha and beta can vary anything between 0 and 1. So it's a continuous. So you can create a massive superposition of states between these 2 levels. Right. But at the end of the day, whatever we are going to meet, because the information or processing can happen with a superposition of infinite number of states, which is slightly difficult, or it is a resource intensive if I do it with a digital mechanism. I mean the present digital technology, because continuously varying means I have to improve the resolution of the bits higher and higher, and it is prone to the error, right? Let's say I'm working with the amplitude modulation alone. So there are different ways of encoding signals which you might have studied. Is so what is called as pulse modulation technique, amplitude modulation, and phase modulation. So that is how this information is encoded on so-called carrier wave and transmitted across. So if I just take a 2-bit system, it will be 0 and 1, and we say the real value of 1 is about 5 voltage. So anything about between 2.6 and above, I consider it as 1. Any voltage less than 2.5 and between 0 and 2.5, I tell it as 0. So I have digitized my analog signal. But you can see that it is a very crude approximation. So I go for a 4-bit system. Single bit, 2 bits. So I can divide the whole signal into 4 parts. So 0, 1.25, 2.5, 3.75, and 5. So anything above this I can encode in much better fashion with higher resolution. So that is the reason why we are hungry for to expand the number of bits from 64 to 128. Now 128 bit encoded laptops are also available in the market, which is highly, and that is where the quantum process, I mean the processing power of this kind of digital information is extremely high. And then it is possible because you are able to have a complete resolution. Now, what is the resolution which we are trying to have here, which I am mentioning here is about? Let's say the signal is from, I have encoded in the 4-bit, the 0 goes from 0 to 1.25, 1 goes to 1.25 to 2.5 voltage. Then the next level goes from 2.5 to 3.75 voltage, and the fourth one goes from 3.75 to 5 voltage. So that is the tolerance which I can work with. Now, what will happen if along the signal, my electrical wire is rusty, or the fiber optic there is some loss of signal, such that there is some bending, or if I'm using fiber optic, there is some bending or a scratch, something, there is some leakage of information. Either something can go out and something can come in at some point. So because of the rusting, the resistance increases, voltage drop is high, and it interferes with the analog signal, because now whatever the voltages which you have sent as 0 to 5 voltage will get dropped in between, and what you receive there is that at the end is 0 to 2.5 voltage. So as a result, what do you expect here? There is a loss of information now because of this amplitude modulation technique, right? So unless and until we have a control over this external environmental factors which will degrade your information, reliable communication is always a question mark, because we don't know what we are trying to send something, and we expect that the other side will receive with the same fidelity, and there is no ambiguity there. So whatever we are seeing, hearing should be received at the other end. That's what our motto of communication. So digitally, when you're trying to do that, if you're trying to improve the resolution, then you are prone to this environmental factor. So the new techniques have to be discovered to take into account of these error corrections which creep in as your signal gets processed and get transmitted on the way. Then reproducing, boosting the signal, because every communication line will always has some losses on the way. So therefore it has to be regularly boosted, and then when you're boosting it, you have to boost again to the original signal. It should not be something different. Okay. Then you have to require the physical resource. Let's say the important resource there, which was in the line of communication, which was in wireless communication, was identifying the carrier frequency. All of you have done some simple course on basic course in electromagnetism, and you know that to create a dipole antenna, you require the length of the antenna to be lambda by 2. Now what is this lambda? Lambda is the wavelength of the signal which you want to emit. If I am going to encode the information at the audio frequency, that is 20 Hz to 20 kHz, you can calculate the lambda, because now this is an electromagnetic wave, so the velocity is c. So you require about 10⁵ meters length of lambda wavelength. That is maybe slightly bigger than the diameter of the earth itself. Now each one should have that antenna to receive and transmit the messages. So you see, it becomes impractical to transmit any meaningful information using the simple Hertzian dipole. So techniques were evolved. What is called as that, for simplest one, we call it the amplitude modulation, where we find that carrier frequency, which is in the order of tens of megahertz, and that amplitude is modulated by the audio frequency. So you see, what you are doing is, in effectively what we have done, we have reduced the length of the antenna required. If it is tens of megahertz, then immediately my antenna size will become some few meters, centimeters to meters, right? Your mobile phone works on gigahertz technology. So therefore it is an embedded small. So it is a few millimeters to centimeter length of antenna is situated inside your mobile phone, which acts as a receiver. If you have seen some old time radios or films where antenna we used to pull some telescopic like thing, metal wire, so that is to act as an antenna to catch the signal better. So it was in the order of few tens of centimeters. So this carrier frequency, this concept itself was a breakthrough in making wireless transmission. But it suffered some other problem, that how do you communicate across different parts of the globe. Then they found that you can use the ionosphere as a reflector and bounce the signal of this ionosphere, and you can reach virtually every point on the surface of the earth. And they choose that particular frequency very judiciously so that maximum reflection occurs at the ionosphere. So there goes the. So what is the story all about? So the story, whatever I'm trying to tell, is impressed upon the challenges which one has to encompass it as you're trying to encode some meaningful information. What are the challenges and things which are going to influence in the design of your computer or whatever you want to create a quantum key distributor or some device to make it based on search algorithms. Whatever you choose to do, you can have to think about a lot of other information about the practicalities, because you're going to work with your quantum computers. So essentially we say it is called as a qubit, right? So qubits are going to replace the normal this binary technology, which is in terms of bits. So yes, it's easy to say let's choose a two-level atom, 0 and 1 state, ground and 1 excited state, that's all. Now what does this mean? Two-level atom can be anything. It can be two-level atom of a electronic energy levels. It can be two-level atom of a nuclear magnetic resonance level, that is nucleus itself, right? It can be spin of the electron. It can be photonic polarization. It can be charge state of a Cooper pairs in superconductors. It can be an ionic trap state where the ions exist in one particular excited state and gets trapped there. Or it can be vacancy centers in the diamond where we have with sufficient data that they exist only in binary states and we have an access to them. Okay, so accessing those two levels is first requirement of any physical quantum computers. First, to identify what physical system you require. The second challenge is how do we access them, right? And then after that we require to encode the information, because now information, as I mentioned in the previous course in nonlinear optics during the discussion on plane electromagnetic, what constitutes a signal. A single plane infinite monochromatic plane wave cannot alone transfer any information. Can you recollect why? Why can't we encode, or we cannot send an information on a single plane, plane infinite plane linearly polarized monochromatic wave? Does anyone know this answer? I mean, I know most of you know because you've done the optics course. Most of you. How many are not from the lasers? What is the number? Laser people.
Sir, I am from condensed.
I am
Condensed.
also from condensed.
Okay. 2. Okay. But anyway, this does not, the answer to this question does not require whether you are a laser group or not. Okay, because it's a very basic thing. It just I mentioned the laser group because I think I remember discussing about it when we started the NLO course. That's why I tried to.
Sir, can you repeat the question again? Sir, I cannot understand the question properly.
I have a source of light which emits linearly polarized plane, infinite plane, monochromatic wave. Okay. My contention is that I cannot encode information. There is no meaningful information which I can encode on this monochromatic wave. What is global phase? Is it common? Mm-hmm. I5. But that phi you can make it 0, right? It's an arbitrary phase. Theta can vary from 0 to 2 pi and repeat itself all the time.
Sir, for a plane wave, the amplitude remains constant. So it will be difficult to represent something that is varying with that plane wave.
Anyone wants to add to these answers, whatever people have said?
Sir, if we have a plane wave, I cannot have a bandwidth, right?
Bandwidth. Bandwidth
Yeah,
is
like
related to the planarity or
in the frequency, like band.
what you should be saying then?
So we need different like when we transmit information, we use different frequency to send audio or video signals. So if we have only
sorry, I'm just trying to correct you because since you are a laser student, so now you should be using an appropriate terminology which you have studied. Okay, so bandwidth is related to which term in the way we have defined the wave?
Okay, sir.
So related to which term?
So bandwidth in terms of here's like to send a signal we use like a frequency range. That I'm calling here as bandwidth.
Right, correct. And that is related to which term in the whatever we have defined?
I can't remember, sir.
Just recall the question which you started with. Because I was very cautious in expressing slowly each word. Anyone can recall?
You said monochromatic.
It is monochromatic.
When you said linear and
Linearly polarized. I said
linearly.
linearly polarized.
Yes, sir.
Right?
And monochromatic.
Monochromatic is related to the bandwidth.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, so for monochromatic, ideal monochromatic, what is the bandwidth?
So bandwidth is, sir, should be 0.
0. So you cannot have any frequency modulation at all. Right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Plane. I said plane wave, so that means the amplitude is also constant.
Yes, sir.
Phase is fixed. Vibration, direction of vibration is also fixed. So there is no way I can encode any information on this or extract any information on this. Because whenever you have to extract an information, it requires a change of state of any of the physical attributes of whatever the physical mechanism which we choose. Right? The information can be encoded in any kind of polarization, it can be amplitude, it can be frequency, phase. All the physical attributes can be used potentially to encode information. Information necessarily involves a change of state. Right? If it is everything is on the 0 state, even in the binary, then you are not able to send any information across, right? There is no change of state there. So, yeah. So therefore, a plane, infinite plane, linearly polarized monochromatic wave cannot contain any information in it. It requires another wave to be superimposed onto this information, onto this wave to create an information. So that is the first thing which we should ask. Whenever we are trying to realize any physical system to demonstrate these quantum computers, we have been learning about different qubits, two-level system. Two-level systems can be anything. It may not be only electronic energy levels. Okay, because normally whenever I talk two-level, that picture from that it is an electronic energy level. It can be nuclear levels also. Because after all, one of the first quantum computers which was designed and showed as proof of principle was on NMR. The NMR quantum computer was the first one which was physically realized. Of course, the number of bits which they used was very, very low. It cannot be higher than 7 to 10 bits. So that was a fundamental problem with which it worked, but nevertheless, it boosted the morale of the quantum computing community that if we can identify and extend this range. The moment you have nuclear magnetic range, so what we have to do is we have to look at what is the change in the energy states there. It's in the order of some few hundred megahertz. Electronic energy levels involve, let's say, visible transitions. It will be in that order of terahertz. Right? So that is where the important thing which I wanted to highlight in that part of the discussion is whenever you are encoding any information, it involves a change of state. So what is the state what you are trying to change will depend upon the system which you have chosen to encode that information and make a quantum computer out of. Last week yes.
Sir, does changing the plane of polarization also does mean a change of state? Like we can use a halfway plate?
Yes, we can. Yes,
halfway plate to change the plane of polarization of a plane polarized light, sir?
Correct.
So it can encode information.
Yes. That is the polarization states can be used to encode information. Horizontal, vertical. There are two basic states for that. That is a linear state that is called as horizontal vertical, and the other is the circular states, right hand and left hand circular polarization.
So use the Jones vector, so you can.
That can be used to describe those states. Yes.
So the plane polarized light, monochromatic plane polarized light can be used to encode information then, sir?
Yeah, if it is a linearly polarized, yes. But to change the state, only when you, on its own, for plain polarized light does not have information. The moment you put a half-wave plate, rotate the state of polarization,
Yes, sir.
then you have encoded, you have something to compare with. So you have changed the state from, let's say, horizontal to vertical.
Yes, sir.
So that itself I can call, let's say, vertical polarized light as 0, horizontal polarized light as
1.
1.
Okay, sir.
And my devices which will help me to flip between these two states is nothing but a half-wave plate.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, so that brings us to the what are the challenges which are posed to the quantum computing community, is that to identify a viable physical system where change of states can be measured with high accuracy. It should be repeatable, it should be reproducible. Now this is something at the loggerheads of quantum computing. Now time and again we'll be revoking back to the fundamental postulates of quantum mechanics. That's all is required to understand this quantum entanglement course. There's nothing more. Physical interpretation wise, if you understand those basic postulates of quantum mechanics, which we do it in the second year of Modern Physics 1 course, and it is done in much more depth and in a detailed manner with different mathematical treatment in the first year of MSc course, in the first quantum mechanics course. I'm not talking about the algebras which you're going to do for quantum, all these approximation methods and what is called as angular momentum algebra. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about the simple postulates, which depending upon the author of the book, it can go from 3 or 5 to 7 or 8. Okay. So therein lies all that information that is required to work with quantum computer. The first thing which is, so as I said, first you have to identify information as to what type of information or what kind of physical resource I require, which I can call as an information. How do I create that information? How do I read that information? How do I manipulate that information? So what are the physical means? Like as you, Devanjan just highlighted, if I take the polarization states of light, I can use a half-wave plate and toggle the states between 0 and 1. So that becomes my resource. Polarization states are my basic resource, or the basis states, what is called as, in which the information can be encoded. So alpha can be anything from 0, which is vertical state, 1 is my horizontal state, and beta. So depending upon this linear superposition of this, I can create infinite number of superposition states. Now let's revisit some postulates of quantum mechanics here again. When you say H psi is equal to E psi, what does that mean? What does it conveys to you? Where psi is an eigenstate, E is an eigen number or eigenvalue. It's an eigenvalue equation, or A psi is equal to small a psi. Where A cap, so I should say A as an operator, capital A as an operator, acting on the eigenstate psi, gives me an into psi of n. Yeah, that is more like a better eigenvalue operator. What does that tell?
It can give different eigenstates. Like if you solve the equation, we can get different states with respect to the operator, different eigenvalues associated with each state, eigenstate.
Right. So now the eigenstates may be countable, right? With infinite numbers. Can I have an infinite number of sets to work with, infinite basis states for doing quantum computation?
The position and momentum eigenstates are like continuous eigenbases.
Yeah, they are continuous eigenbases. So there can be choice of basis state. So that is where now you see why we highlighted this problem is because we are going to work with qubits. They follow the laws of quantum mechanics, so they have to obey these postulates also. So if I have to invoke something information, which because what is the manipulator here is the operator A, capital A, acting on a superposition of n number of states, psi, capital Psi. So when that acts on that operator, it will pick up only one of that particular eigenstate psi n with a probability small a n associated with it. So what does it mean is I have lost a lot of information. The moment I operate something, if I don't operate on this eigenstate psi, which is superposition of all these eigenstates, summation of all the eigenstates, let's say psi, capital Psi is equal to summation of psi 0 to psi n. So it has n number of eigenstate as a superposition state on which this operator, capital operator A, acts on it. So before the operator acts, the system existed in any of these n eigenstate which we don't know. So if I have to have an access to the information, I have to find a suitable eigen operator. I cannot find the momentum of a state by using a position operator or vice versa. I have to choose an appropriate operator, which is called as an eigen operator, which will act on this eigenstate, which is nothing but a superposition of different basis states. And the system can exist with certain probability in any of those eigenstates before the operator. And when the operator acts on it, we say it collapses into one of the eigenstates with a probability of mod a n square to a particular only one of the individual eigenstate. So you see, a lot of information is lost when you perform any operation on the quantum states. So that is a loss. But so why are we doing? I mean, we started with the axiom that if I have a two-level quantum states, I can create an infinitely parallel operation on these two-level states because they are in the superposition with alpha at alpha 0, alpha acting on the 0th state plus, no, sorry, alpha is the eigenvalue of the 0th state plus beta of the first excited state or the excited state. Since there is two-level system, so it is an excited state, any one of them. And we say alpha and beta can be continuously variable between 0 and 1. The moment I apply an operator, so whenever we are doing and designing a quantum device, we have to bear in mind that in what are the basis states in which that information is encoded. So therefore, I have to design the corresponding eigen operator for that, which will extract the necessary information for me and distill it and project it in one of those eigenstates. So the challenge here is identify a physical system. So how do you go about identifying a basis states? Then you go back and find out what is the Hamiltonian of that given system. So what are the different forces or what potential the particle experiences in that particular environment of that physical resource. Then if I know that's Hamiltonian and I solve the problem, I will be able to obtain what are my basis states in which the entire physical resource can be explained or understood. Okay. So that Hamiltonian can be anything. Now you have to choose a system. It can be magnetic spin, electronic spin, photon polarization or number state of photon, that is presence of photon or absence of photon. It's a binary information which is used in quantum electrodynamics, quantum-based quantum computers. NMR, that means you are looking at the nuclear magnetic level, the two-level transition between the nucleus itself, right, or the ionic trap states. So whatever the physical resource I have to choose, what does the operator means now here? Or we are looking at the Hamiltonian here. One is a constant field with the particular target which is going to execute this information. Let's say we talk about a hydrogen atom. I choose that as my physical resource because it's a well-studied problem. I know where are the energy levels, and I choose n is equal to 0 and n is equal to 1 and n is equal to 2 as two of my two-level system in which I'm going to supply. So now what is the operator here? Operator will be the shining of light which will execute transition between n is equal to 1 to n is equal to 2 level. So I have to supply that much energy. So my basis states are the electronic energy or the wave functions of the hydrogen atom problem with the corresponding n is equal to 1 and n is equal to 2 state. If I'm only talking about the energy levels, I'm not talking about the electron spin here. I'm not choosing the electron spin as a basis state in this example. I've ignored the electronic spins and I'm just working with the energy levels. Why I'm able to do it? Because I'm choosing that appropriate energy which will execute the transition between n is equal to 1 to 2. If I have to work with the spin state, then the energy level which will going to flip from in the n is equal to 1 state, either the electron can be in the up state or it can be in the down state. So that is also an information. It can also be a binary level. It's a two-level system. It's a n is up state is 1, down state is 0. So what is the energy required to flip the electronic energy, the spin level? That will be some few megahertz. So if I am able to supply that much of energy, which is corresponding to flipping of this electronic spin level, then that forms my operator, which will allow me to go from one state to the other state. Okay. So that is what is now we are trying to see back, look back at our postulates and try to see the challenges what is being posed to us in designing these quantum computers. Right. So everyone is with me, everyone is able to follow what I am trying to talk, or if you have some confusion, please voice your opinion.
So
yes.
So is it always necessary to choose the energy eigenstates as the levels?
Yeah, we'll come to that. What will happen if you don't do it?
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I will come to that. Anyone else?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, earlier you said that plain linearly polarized monochromatic wave won't be able to transfer or able to encode information.
Yes.
Sir, but
on
there
its
is
own.
still
On its own.
But
on its
still,
own, it does not have information.
Sir, but there will be one plane of polarization still vibrating, right?
Yeah. But how do you know that?
Why can't we just encode in that change?
No, that is a state. See, now you have to think carefully what you're trying to do. How do you know it's a in any of this? Can be any of the horizontal or vertical polarized state. Okay, which is monochromatic. It's a plane wave. Amplitude is all constant. There's no change in the amplitude, no change in the phase. It keeps on repeating itself, and it's an infinite wave. So it has an infinite extent, right? The moment you say monochromatic wave, that means that field is present throughout the universe. There is no it extends from minus infinity to plus infinity. So when you're saying that you're trying to have some information encoded, that means you're trying to extract, you are trying to operate it with some other basis state which is available to you. Right? On its own, it is not able to have any information. So it will be only 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So even if I take, say, a horizontal state, which is the light which I given, so all its state will be only 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, right? So nothing else will be there.
Sir, but there will be its vibration will be restricted to one plane, right?
Yeah, so that is what I'm calling horizontally polarized light.
In that particular plane, change like a vibration will exist, and can't we encode anything in that vibration, in that change?
That is the frequency. So you have to detect the change in the frequency, right?
Yes, sir.
So that is also a single frequency will be there. So that even if you say that information of that particular frequency, that is another state 0, and it will continue in that state all the way throughout. So,
okay, sir.
So therefore, I'm not able to alter the state to pass on any meaningful information.
Okay.
And uncertainty principle doesn't allow you to have such a state. That is the fortunate part of it. Yeah. Any other thing which you want to discuss or clarify?
So one doubt.
Yeah, please.
So you said that due to like we use frequency and amplitude modulation to just alter the wave in such a way that we can pass the information. So
Yes.
wave packets also are like superpositions of waves
Which one?
have wave packets. Sir.
Yeah, wave packet. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so it is also a superposition of waves which have different frequency, and their phases are related in with an equation in such a way that only one part of the space is like the constructive interference is happening, so that it exists in one part of the space, and the others are
space and time
destructive.
both.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
So can that be used as a can we use it to send information?
Yeah, anything which is not monochromatic is all you can use anything for that information. Yes.
So why is frequency modulation more like? Are there any benefits to using this over that?
Frequency versus amplitude.
So frequency modulation, amplitude modulation normally used like we have seen the use of it in this radios and all that for a long time. This pulsed propagation of information.
Pulse modulation is very much used. It is used in the military purposes.
So that's what I'm asking, sir, because like it's not used commonly. So is there a reason for that? Like, is there any benefit?
Yeah, the resource required is very high.
And this is there a benefit?
It is highly secretive. It's not repeatable. So encoding, like it's something like your OTP one time.
Okay.
The sequences of pulses which comes carries the information, and unless you have the key, you cannot break it open.
Okay.
So and that gives it's a burst technology, and the smaller the pulse rate, most of the earlier radio transmitters up to 70s was based on pulse modulation. Earlier they were in First World War. After that, somewhere between Second World War, they shifted from amplitude to frequency because amplitude naturally degrades, which is used in. So for better quality of sound, which is normally used in your mobile carriers, you can see that earlier, I don't know whether your grandparents might have this radio transmitter. The signal will start slowly fading as you listen. It will have an ebb. Amplitude will increase, decrease as you are hearing the voice.
Yes.
So that is because the pulses, which is actually echoing in time. So that is a constructive and destructive interference happening in time, which you are able to receive at a given location at your home. Okay, that is actually an interference happening at the microwave range. Where is this happening? It is because the nearby surrounding obstacles, which has same dimensions as the wavelength of that frequency transmission will bounce back from front and back, and then they interfere at a given location, which creates this variation in the amplitude. That is one. The second thing is that as it propagates, there is a distortion of the signal. Okay, if you're using microwave, then maybe there is some high level of dust or particular characteristic of dust pollutants in the air which can absorb and reduce the intensity of light as it propagates further. Or there can be a spark somewhere, and then it adds to the amplitude, and then you have kind of disturbance. So amplitude modulation was very much prone to environmental degradation of information, whereas frequency modulation technique was much better, but the technology involved was slightly more costlier, which was not accessible that time. Now it's a routine. You have chips which are made out of that, which does this frequency modulation for you. So that is gets rid of all this environmental degradation and all those problems. So you have a better quality of signal irrespective of thunder, lightning, or whatever it is. It doesn't depend on the amplitude at all. It just depends on the change in the frequency where the information is encoded, and then you have a decoder in your phone which gives back your information. So it is a much better technology which is used. So you can see the FM radio. But since you're going to use a frequency modulation, the carrier wave is going to be further modulated with certain set of frequency, the bandwidth required is slightly higher. So the moment you have a higher frequencies, the propagation is limited to only line of sight. Okay, so UHF, VHF transmission has a problem of that line of sight transmission. And then plus, they cannot be bounced off from your ionosphere. So those frequencies are in the gigahertz. Happens to be hundreds of megahertz or gigahertz. So that is the problem. It can just penetrate the atmosphere and go out, escape. So the only way is to have repeaters or towers at every some line of sight distances. And then you require repeaters to amplify the signal and relay it further so that it can cover it. So therefore you can see why you have so many mobile towers around you, network region. It's precisely because of that. Because all this transmission are line of sight transmissions. Pulse modulation technique was used for military purposes, because if you're sending continuous wave, you can always tap it and modulate the signal and try to decode it by by choosing the same electronics with which you have encoded. But pulse, you don't know, randomly it will come as a burst of signal which carries all the information. So therefore, people try to have as small as pulse as possible at, sometimes they will say the periodic burst, or they will say it an aperiodic burst. The aperiodic burst was the most preferred because you never know when the transmission is coming. Or if you have pre-decided time, then you can send a single burst of time, that particular event, and all the information encoded in that pulse and send it. And that information, the smaller, the more you compress in time, more number of frequencies are required. That is, you have to take a Fourier transform of a Dirac delta function. So compression in times means more number of frequencies required in bandwidth. Right? Yes. So the more the number of frequencies, that means more number of information corresponding to those frequencies can be encoded. So therefore it becomes more challenging, because you require what is the technology is about? You require that information, because every electronic device has its own gain bandwidth curve. It will have maximum gain for a certain around central frequency and over a delta mu over it. Now, if you are expanding the range of frequency, the dynamic range over which the frequency the device has to perform, that means it should be linearly amplifying over all that particular range. So that means more and more number of devices has to supplement it, so that it has a wide bandwidth. So if you are increasing the bandwidth, the gain will go down. Now here, to have a meaningful transmission of information, you require a minimum of gain, which can overcome the losses in transmission as well as in the processing of that information in your devices. So you have to overcome that. So I cannot reduce the gain beyond a certain limit. So that puts a restriction on the bandwidth. So I require multiple such units of the frequency encoder. And then if you have multiple of, if one particular instrument does not perform it, I require to sync different such units. Because when you're trying to do this frequency the Fourier transform, all the frequencies have to be in phase at the same time. So that's a challenge. In optics, we do a microsecond interferometer. You take a single light source, split into two. So till from the point at which it splits into from a beam splitter, from that point we say the beams are coherent. So that is how we generate. But now how do we do in this? So therefore, syncing these different frequency transmitters becomes a challenge. It becomes an expensive device. But it is far more secured way of communication, which was normally available to the military, not for the common people, because the cost was exorbitant. Yeah. So you can, wave packets are used. It is used for different communications, and that's the only way forward for compressing the information and processing. Okay. So it is used.
Okay, sir.
Anyone else has anything?
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
Sir, regarding the previous question, you said that the frequency will be the same.
Yeah, frequency will be the same. No, it's a monochromatic wave.
Yeah, but if I take a single wave, then each phase will be different, right? At each position.
Yeah, it will vary from 0 to 2 pi over a length of cycle. Yes.
Can't we just encode in that? It's also a kind of change.
Yeah, but for a particular location, how do you encode that or read out that information from the phase? Let's say talk about a light. I want to know the phase of that light. So how do we read it out?
So I don't think the phase can be read, but the phase difference can be read.
Phase, yeah, phase is always a relative term. Phase, you cannot talk about a single wave. But what he is asking is that for a single wave, he is time stamping it. So as soon as the light is emitted from the source, and then after a particular time t, there will be some change of phase within that one length of cycle. But the problem is, if you think about the definition of this monochromatic wave, the expanse of it, you are not, monochromatic wave by definition itself an infinite expanse. Okay, the moment it is there, it is present all through the universe. So there is no time stamping you can do on such a wave. If you can do time stamping that at this particular time and at this particular point in space, this is my phase, and then I'm trying to move across a different time or spatial unit, then measure the change of the phase, then yes, that information is there. But unless you allow the wave to propagate, but here the wave is not propagating, it's already there. It is all prevalent over the entire universe at the same time. And that is where, since the phase as such is a relative term, you measure the change in the phase. You normally measure the change in the phase from one position or at one time to the other time as it evolves. And that you cannot do it unless you have another wave to beat it to measure its phase. And that is what you do it in the interference experiment. Right? Interference is the only way you can measure the phase of any given quantity of any wave for the light in the visible band.
So using calcite crystal, can I do it like the E wave and O wave, the phase difference you can calculate?
E ray and O ray, you can just have one. See, E and O ray has a property that the polarizations are orthogonal. Okay, so if it is linearly polarized, it will go as either O ray or E ray. It cannot be both. Okay. Because we have given you a linearly polarized, so it is either horizontal or vertical.
But if you unpolarized, like...
No, that's what I'm saying. Now, the moment you relax that condition, then it's possible. Randomly polarized light, or what you call it as unpolarized light, is a mixture of all different polarization states, right? There's more than one wave.
Okay, sir.
It's more than one wave. So you're allowing different polarization states, you're allowing different states, and that the moment you have a change in the states of light or change in state of any physical resource, that is an information for us.
Sir, I have a question. Like the change of
Yeah.
state is like gate operation, no, sir?
Change of state?
Is it like gate operation?
Yeah, it's a gate. I mean, yeah, that's what we have to construct this gate operation. Yes.
Sir, but like if we shine light on a hydrogen atom, then the electron jumps from n equal to 1 to n equal to 2 state. So you said that as an operator, but an operator doesn't like changes the state, it detects the state, like it collapses.
We will come to that question now. So already now what we have done, that we have identified an eigen operator, which is the presence of this light, which has exact energy which matches the difference of those two energy levels. And they should have the same polarization, because polarization is also encoded in that the other quantum numbers, L, M, and S, right?
Yes, sir.
If I don't choose an appropriate orientation of the light, I cannot execute the transition unless and until I satisfy the selection rules. Right?
Yes, sir.
It's a dipole transition, right? So it has to be allowed transition.
But sir,
And
like
that has to obey the selection rules. Yeah.
operators are like analyzer, I think. So analyzer just
Yeah.
detects the
I mean, I
state
will,
of
since you are an optics student, so I will say that analyzer and polarizer are the same thing. It
Yes,
just
sir.
does the different purposes, right?
Yes, sir.
If
Yes,
you are
sir.
using it to encode the information, it works as a polarizer.
Polarizer.
If you are trying to use as a detector, it works as a
Analyzer.
analyzer. So the instrument is the same, the function or the purpose is different.
Yes, so I'm saying the gate operation is different. Like gate operation
so
is like
this,
quarter wave plate
so
and half wave plate. And
quarter
analyzer
wave
is
is
like
so we'll be coming to that. What is that kind of operation which you have done? Have you done the gate operations so far in this course?
I have read about different gates like complementary, sorry, like
T-naught.
Hadamard gate and
No, that you have done, but in the class has it been done or not? In the quantum entanglement course, has it been done? No. Okay, so we'll also quickly go over through those gates when we are trying to, because without defining the gates, it's not possible to execute any digital operation or information operation. And good that someone raised, and we could lead to that is also required to be done here. Okay, so far I'm just trying to motivate ourselves the challenges which we are going to face if we have to make a quantum computing device. Okay, so that is what our right now the goal is, looking at this quantum based on the quantum mechanics postulates of quantum mechanics. Okay, so coming to that other question, whether it is going always to be an eigenstate. Now let's say if psi is not an eigenstate and I take any operator, any random operator which is not an eigen operator of the states acts on the state. So let's say x is a non-eigen operator acting on some states psi. So what is the resultant output?
another state, another like phi will be the resultant output, like another
Phi.
state.
So it is not a superposition of any of the eigenstates, right?
Yes, sir.
It will take you to some different states. So what do we say? We say that any other measurement which is a non-eigen operator, it has changed the state of the system itself. So therefore, if I have to, now what is the importance of these basis vectors or basis states what we are choosing? Because we are going to encode the information. As a superposition of different states means that much of information is encoded on it. Okay. So if and those basis states will require a specific operator, which is an eigen operator, which will execute these transitions, which is allowed. So any non-eigen operator is going to change or destroy my states. Okay, all that information which I have encoded will be all lost. I cannot use it. So that is one thing which we have to require. Remember that. So that is what is said in the postulates also. And the second thing what we are harping here is that we are saying that there are certain stationary states in which any quantum mechanical systems can exist. And whatever all that it can exist in any of the superposition of any of the state eigenstates which is allowed by that physical resource. Okay. So that is what is being said and mentioned here. So that puts a restriction in identifying as a probable candidate for quantum computers. First thing, of course, we have to identify a two-level system. Then we have to have a system where it can be unambiguously defined. Those states can be defined. Then I have to find a set of operators. See, normally what do we say in quantum mechanics? If you give a Hamiltonian, I can find out a wave function which can describe the state of the system. And if I know the wave function of the given system, I can describe any interaction or any physical phenomena associated with that particular physical resource, and I can give you the answer what is the, let's say if it's an electrical charge, electricity moving into it, or magnetic charge. I have to choose a appropriate potential, I have to use appropriate potential and operator to extract that information. So we say that if a system is described by its own wave function or eigenstates, then I have to only choose an appropriate operator to extract any information from it. So I have to design my system such that I should be able to have an access to a range of eigenoperators which will perform the computation for me. Okay, so we have to find what are the systems and how do you say computation. So you, let's say even if you have executed, like let's say two-level atom. So what kind of information, what kind of gate it can perform with whatever you know of? Does it perform a gate operation? Devanjan?
So can you please explain the question again?
No. See, the question here is, now we have said that the background which I am saying is that I have managed to identify a physical system which can be described in terms of its wave function, which is nothing but in terms of its eigenstates, a superposition of its eigenstates. And corresponding to that, I have found an eigenoperator or a range of eigenoperators which will extract some meaningful information from me. Okay.
If the question is for a two-level system, what kind of gate?
No, I will come to that. So with this background, suddenly I remembered that we were talking about a two-level system. So in between, we mentioned about gates.
Yes, sir.
And I said that eigenoperator is the light with an exact energy, which is the difference between the two energy levels, having observing the selection.
Yes, sir.
The question is, this shining this light of that corresponding energy and the corresponding polarization, it will excite from n is equal to 1 to 2, or it will stimulate downward transition or emission from 2 to 1. Does it perform any gate operation? That's
I think so, sir. I think so.
Which one gate? Which gate do you perform?
So sigma x, I think, not gate.
Not gate, right? So it performs a not gate. So you can see now we are able to identify a system. Now we are able to identify the operations also. So what we are going to do for quantum computation purpose, since the digital technology is well matured, so we have to create all the analog part of all the gate operations, not, nor, addition, subtraction, right? And a sequence of that of a mixture of XOR. all those gates have to be found a quantum analog. Only then we can do processing of the information. So here in the simple example of this hydrogen atom, its wave function forms my eigenstates or basis states. I shine the light, which is nothing but a dipole operator, acting on this, and it will execute a absorption, and it changes from the state 0 to 1, because that is the purpose of the NOT gate, right? When the NOT gate operates on state 0, it changes to 1. If it is act on state 1, it will make it to 0. The same thing is happening. So when the light is, if the system, hydrogen atom is a ground state, it will absorb light and go to 1. The next, that is from n is equal to 1 to it will go to n is equal to 2. If it is in the n is equal to 2 state, it will stimulate, emit, and come down to n is equal to 1. So again, a change of state from 1 to 0. So that way it has performed my gate operation. So if I have to do a NOT operation, NOT gate operation, all I have to do is shine the light on this two-level system which has that particular basis. Okay, if I take a light eigen operator which is of a different frequency, different polarization, is not going to execute the transition, right? Because that particular operator which has a different frequency, different polarization, is not an eigen operator of this particular two states. So therefore, the choice of the operator is very, very important for me to execute any gate operation. So as and when we are going to discuss different physical system, we are going to rely on what are the exact physical resource which can be identified as a gate. If I am choosing the polarization states of light as my basis states, then I require a half wave plate and a quarter wave plate which can manipulate or change the state of light from horizontal to vertical or vertical to horizontal, or from a superposition of both horizontal and vertical, or I can change it to a different basis state from linear to circular, or I can introduce as a phase retarder. Okay, so all those gate operations will be defined in terms of combination of the half wave plate and a quarter wave plate. Of course, a phase retarder is nothing but a simple glass plate put in the path of the light, so that will change use some different phase. And that how does that phase is used? Because someone asked, right, why can't we use the phase as information? Yes, you can use the phase as information, but you require to detect the change in the phase of state. So the way you can do it, you can just put a phase retarder and measure or do the interference of the light to light source. Then only you can measure it. The change is there. Okay, so yeah, so that is what we are going to do. Okay, so that forms my basis and the argument. So what we have done is we are trying to invoke the postulates of quantum mechanics and see what is that it allows us to do. So now this operator, if I have to, let's say if it's a, so what does it has said? If I don't choose a right operator, it can collapse the state into a random state and all the information is lost. So we have to make a good choice of this operator. I can interpret the same equation in a different way. After having, so it has the operators have acted on the state and it has created a set of different operations. That means it has collapsed the wave function in different state, but still we don't want to know which state it is in. Okay, so that is performing an operation, but reading out. So if I have to read out, I require another operator to know where exactly it has, whether it's in the ground state or in the excited state. Okay, so for that, I require to send an appropriate wavelength of light. The same example which you quoted can be used to read out the state of the given light. So I will know that, knowing the state, I will know what operation is performed and what is the result of my operation there, or any mathematical function which I have tried to recreate in this system. That is what we have to make it. So there are different candidates for this, so which will take up in brief about all the system, and then we'll quickly also go over through this gate operations, which may be just sufficient, and then look at, so keeping all those base fact in mind, DiVincenzo came up with this criteria for, if at all, if quantum computers have to be developed, it has to follow some set of laws, which was expanded later on to include some more information. Okay. So what I will do is I will stop here for today. In the next class, we'll do the DiVincenzo criteria, and maybe we'll start with the gate operation first and construct the quantum analog of such gate operations, and then move on to the DiVincenzo criteria of realizing the physical system. And then we'll look at some few physical system where this quantum computation is being done. Okay, so yeah, that's what I will do for next class. So for today I will stop here, because just babbling here may not be helpful. So I wanted to have support of some slides so that it becomes much more useful for you. Yeah. Anyone wants to say something? Anything which I have said which you have not heard about our sets? Feel free to. No, whatever I have said throughout, anything which you have not heard was some new term which I have used. Yeah, that's what we are that's what we are going to do in the next two classes. So what this class I have tried to motivate myself to create what is the requirement. I am trying to look back at the digital computer, what are the things which is required. Then I have to ask question myself that how the information is stored, how it is processed, how it is encoded, decoded, what are the physical systems requirement is there to do this computation purpose. So because based on that I have to make an analog, based on that analogy I have to make some quantum devices. Yeah, please go ahead. Okay. Okay. Jesus, Jenny, you wanted to ask something?
No, sir, nothing.
Okay, I thought you were blinking, so that's all. Yeah, anyone else?
Sir, like
Yeah.
me and Jayas are doing project work regarding this quantum computing related. So we read about
Project
some
work.
part. Yeah, project work, sir.
Okay.
Under SPM, sir. So
Okay.
we read about some of the things, some of them things like gates and all about those we discussed. So it is quite relatable to us, like what we have read earlier, like the gate operations and everything. But most of us are not like, some part has been discussed in SPM class, but not much. So if you start with the gate operations and all, everything will be
yeah, that's what I said. No? I will start with the gate operation, then move on to the DiVincenzo criteria, and then we'll look into some candidate for physical realizations.
Yes, sir. Like I can relate, even though there was no presentation and everything, whatever you said today, like it was, all of them were relatable and I can understand everything.
Okay. As I can see, only 2 of you were able to understand. The rest are all, I don't know whether they're awake or just logged in and disappeared. Okay, it's your choice.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, good.
So I understood the
SBHK is who?
Sir, Shobit, sir.
Sobit. Okay. Hari Prasad said he understood. Okay, so what I'm expecting you is that you read the postulates of quantum mechanics once again and try to understand the language, the mathematical language that is expressed in terms of why those postulates are there and what does it has an implication for us. Okay, how is it going to help or not help in making quantum computing device? Or in other words, what is the restriction it imposes on us to make us realize a quantum computer? Okay, so that is just all is based on only postulates of quantum. There is nothing else what is required. Okay. The rest is like the moment I give you a Hamilton, I know that you are good at solving the problems and you give me the answers for that. So that part I will leave it to you. I am more worried about understanding the process of mathematics, what you are going to do. Okay. You have to start visualizing those mathematics. Like if I am solving a differential equation, what does it mean? When I am using a different potential, or let me say, if I am giving a physical system, how to extract a potential out of it, and then solve the problem. So that is appreciation has to be there, which I require you to do. Okay. So if no one has any question, then maybe we can stop here. If anyone wants to share something, please feel free.
Thank you, sir.
And just one thing, if you find it is very repetitive or boring, please stop me and say that it has been done, so I should skip and move ahead. Okay, you have, because I'm not exactly following what SCM done, because I was on and off his lectures in between, and I didn't have time to go through his video lectures, which I'll try to do at some point of time. But if you find that it is too elementary for you, please raise your hand and say that, okay, so you can skip it, move ahead. I will do that. Okay, then we'll stop here for the day.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.